I've lived in apartment buildings my whole life. First in Chicago, then in Denver, now in a mid-rise just outside of Seattle. If you've ever lived in a place like this, you know the quirks, the laundry machines that eat your quarters, the faint smell of someone's cooking that seeps into the hallways, the elevators that always seem one step away from breaking down. I don't usually take the stairs. 10 floors up, it's easier to just wait for the elevator, even if it's slow. But 3 weeks ago, the elevator was out for routine maintenance, and I didn't have a choice. That was the first time I noticed it. I was walking up from the lobby, dragging groceries in both hands, when I realized the numbers painted on the stairwell landings didn't add up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But instead of 8, I came to a landing marked 7. At first I thought I was exhausted, maybe misreading it. But no, the numbers were painted in blocky white stencil. Clear as day. The door itself was different too. No knob. No lock. Just a flat gray slab, like it wasn't meant to be used. I remember feeling a chill standing there, like the air was heavier than it should have been. But I kept climbing, and sure enough, the next landing was 8, my floor. I laughed it off that night. Maintenance mistake, I figured. Maybe an old numbering system no one bothered to fix. But a few days later, the elevator was working again, and out of curiosity, I checked the stairs on my way down. There was no second 7. Just the usual, 5, 6, 7, 8. I walked up and down twice, making sure I hadn't missed it. Nothing. I started to think I'd imagined it. But then, 2 weeks later, when the elevator was out again, there it was. Second 7, back in its place like it had never vanished. Same door. Same stenciled number. And this time, when I stopped to stare at it, I could swear I heard something faint on the other side. Not voices, not banging, just the sound of footsteps. Slow, steady, pacing back and forth. I froze, groceries biting into my palms. And then the steps stopped. Right on the other side of the door. I ran the rest of the way up, slammed my apartment door shut, and tried to convince myself it was just pipes, or echoes, or anything that made sense. But last night, when I came home late, I took the stairs again. And second 7 wasn't there. Only a blank wall where it should have been. I didn't tell anyone about the second 7. How do you even explain something like that without sounding unhinged? I just kept replaying it in my head, the gray door, the footsteps, the way it all disappeared the next night like it had never been there. For a while, the building went back to normal. Elevator fixed. No second 7. Just me, my groceries, my routines. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Last Friday, I finally gave in. The elevator was out again, unexpected repairs, and the thought of walking past that spot made my stomach knot. But at the same time, I wanted to see it. To prove it was real. I climbed slowly. 5, 6, 7. And then, like an old bruise resurfacing, it was there again. Another landing. Another 7. The same gray door with no handle. Only this time, the number looked fresher, like it had been painted yesterday. The white stencil sharp against the concrete, not faded like the rest of the stairwell. I stopped. The silence was heavy, but not empty. It felt like a room holding its breath. I reached out and pressed my fingers to the cold metal. No sound. No footsteps. I backed away. Counted my steps up to 8. My floor. My apartment. I shut the door behind me and stood there, heart hammering. 5 minutes later, I went back out. Down the stairs. 5, 6, 7. Nothing. No second 7. Just blank concrete where it had been. It wasn't just appearing and disappearing anymore. It was moving. That night, I dreamed about the stairwell. I dreamed about standing between the two 7s, the door opening, and a figure standing in the dark just out of reach. When I woke up, my phone buzzed with a building-wide alert. Elevator out of service, please use stairs. It was only 6 a.m., but I got up, heart pounding, and opened my apartment door. The hallway was quiet. The stairwell was just steps away. I didn't want to look. But I knew if I didn't, I'd never sleep again. 5, 6, 7. And then, no second 7. Just the ordinary landing. Until I started back up. Halfway to 8, I glanced down, and there it was. A gray door where it hadn't been seconds before, exactly one flight beneath me. Like it had followed me up. I couldn't stop thinking about it, how the second 7 had shifted, how it seemed to follow me. I told myself I wouldn't take the stairs again, that I'd wait for the damn elevator no matter how long it took. But 2 nights later, I didn't have a choice. I came home late, the lobby empty, the out-of-service sign taped crookedly to the elevator doors. So I climbed. 5, 6, 7. I held my breath, turned the corner, and there it was. The other 7. Waiting for me. The number looked bolder this time, almost wet, like the paint hadn't dried. My stomach twisted. I thought about just walking past it, straight up to 8, locking my door, pretending again. But then I heard it. The footsteps. Not steady this time, but restless, fast, then slow, like someone pacing, turning sharply, then stopping. My throat went dry. Before I could stop myself, I whispered, "Hello?" Silence. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe the building's stale air finally getting to me. But I reached out and pressed my hand against the door. It was ice cold. Too cold for concrete sealed inside a heated building. And then I pushed. The door opened. No handle, no knob, no lock, but it swung inward like it had just been waiting. Beyond was a narrow corridor, lit by a single bulb hanging from a wire. The walls were the same gray concrete, but wetter, darker, as if the air itself carried moisture. The hallway stretched straight ahead, farther than it should have. I knew this building. The stairwell walls backed up against other apartments, storage rooms. But this space couldn't exist. I stepped inside. Just one step. The air was heavy, damp, and smelled faintly metallic, like old pennies or blood. Behind me, the door slammed shut. I spun, panic rising, and pressed my palms flat against it. No handle. No seam. No way back. And in the silence, I heard them again. Footsteps. Not behind the door this time. Inside. Somewhere farther down the hall. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, too far away to place but close enough to make my chest tighten. I pressed my back against the cold concrete wall, straining to listen. One step. Then another. Then nothing. The silence pressed in on me like weight. I turned, searching the hallway. It stretched farther than it should have, longer than the entire width of the building. The single bulb overhead buzzed faintly, casting weak circles of light on the slick floor. Beyond that, shadows. I told myself to stay put, that someone would notice I was missing, that maintenance would open the stairwell in the morning. But the thought of standing there all night, pinned between silence and footsteps, was worse than moving forward. So I walked. The floor was damp under my sneakers, each step sending a faint echo back at me. After a dozen paces, I saw the first door. It was the same as the one I'd come through, gray, handleless, flush with the wall. Only this one wasn't blank. Someone had stenciled a number onto it. 7. I felt my throat close. Another 7. Not painted neatly like the stairwell marker, but crooked, smudged, as though someone had rushed it with a dripping brush. I backed away, but the corridor stretched on, pulling me forward. A few feet later, another door. Same slab of concrete, same stenciled 7. And another. And another. Every 20 feet, another door marked with the same number. The air grew colder the farther I went. The buzzing bulb behind me faded until I was walking into dim shadow, lit only by another weak bulb further down the hall. The footsteps had stopped. Or maybe they hadn't, maybe they were matching mine, waiting for me to pause. When I stopped to test it, the echoes didn't. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering, and looked at the nearest door. The surface vibrated faintly beneath my hand, as though something on the other side was moving, or breathing. And then, from somewhere deeper down the hall, a new sound rose. Not footsteps. Knuckles. Knocking. 3 sharp raps, muffled by concrete, echoing down the endless corridor of sevens. I turned back, desperate to find the door I'd come through, but the hallway behind me was gone. Just more concrete. And more doors. The knocks didn't stop. 3 raps, then silence. 3 more, a little louder, closer this time. I pressed my palms over my ears, but the sound seemed to come from inside my head, vibrating in my teeth. I had 2 choices: keep walking down the endless corridor, or try one of the doors. My throat was raw from holding my breath, my chest tight, my legs already trembling. Standing still wasn't an option. I stepped toward the nearest door. The painted 7 looked fresh, so fresh it almost glistened in the dim light. I pressed my hand flat against it. Cold. Smooth. But beneath it, there was that same vibration, like a hum buried deep in the concrete. I whispered to myself, "It's just a wall. It's just paint." And then I pushed. The door gave way. No handle, no hinges, yet it swung inward like it had been waiting for me. Beyond it wasn't another hallway. It was stairs. The same gray steps I'd walked 1,000 times in my building, except older somehow. The concrete was cracked, the paint peeled, the stenciled numbers on the landings faint and crooked. I looked back over my shoulder. The corridor of doors had vanished. Behind me was just the stairwell. Normal again. Almost. I gripped the railing and climbed. 6, 7. Then another 7. I swallowed hard. My pulse thudded in my ears. The walls here were damp, the air stale like something had been sealed shut for years. I climbed again, legs heavy, stomach twisting. 6, 7. Another 7. My breath hitched. I turned in a slow circle, realizing the truth: I wasn't climbing at all. The stairs weren't taking me anywhere. I was stuck between floors, looping through the same 7th landing over and over. And then I heard it again. Footsteps. Above me this time. Slow. Deliberate. I craned my neck, staring up the dim stairwell. For the briefest second, I saw movement, just the suggestion of legs disappearing around the next turn. Someone was here. Someone was waiting. I tightened my grip on the railing and forced myself to keep going. And when I reached the next landing, the stenciled number had changed. Not 7. 8. Relief crashed through me, hot and dizzying. I almost laughed. Almost. Until I noticed the door. It wasn't my door. The number was right. But the slab of gray concrete stretched taller than it should have, and wider. And at eye level, scratched deep into the surface, were words. Don't look up. I stood frozen in front of that message. Don't look up. Every instinct screamed at me to obey. To push through the door, to run back, to do anything except tilt my head. But fear does something strange. It dares you. It whispers that maybe, just maybe, if you check, you'll prove it's nothing. My fingers dug into the railing. My neck ached as I fought it, eyes locked on the scratched words. I told myself not to. I told myself I'd regret it. And then I looked up. The stairwell above me was darker than it should have been. The emergency light buzzed faintly, but it didn't reach the next flight. The shadows there felt thicker, heavier, as if the concrete itself swallowed the glow. And in that shadow, something leaned just out of view. A leg. Bare. Grayish. Motionless. I blinked, and it shifted back. Slowly. Deliberately. Not away. Closer. I stumbled backward, my breath rasping. My shoulder slammed into the cold concrete wall. For a heartbeat I thought about sprinting down, but what if it was waiting below too? Another step echoed above. Heavy. Slow. It wasn't rushing me. It didn't need to. I shoved at the 8 door. My palms slipped with sweat, but this time it opened easily, as if it wanted me to step through. I staggered into a hallway. Except it wasn't mine. The paint was the wrong color, a pale, sickly yellow. The carpet was old, threadbare, stained with patches I didn't want to think about. Every door I passed had a peephole, but they were all covered from the inside. No numbers. No sound. The stairwell door slammed shut behind me, echoing down the corridor. I turned back, panic swelling, but the door had no handle from this side. Just a slab of concrete again. Then, from down the hall, I heard it. The creak of a hinge. One of the doors was opening. And I realized with a sick twist in my gut, I wasn't supposed to look up in the stairwell. But here, in this place, there were no warnings left. The door at the end of the hall creaked wider. I froze, every muscle trembling, my breath caught in my throat. Someone stepped out. At first glance, they looked normal. A man in his 40s, wearing a faded t-shirt and sweatpants, barefoot on the grimy carpet. His hair was thinning, his eyes dull, like any tired neighbor you might pass in the laundry room. But something was wrong. His face. The smile. It stretched too far. Not grotesque, not like a monster, just slightly wider than it should have been. Enough to make my stomach twist. "Evening," he said, voice flat. Another door opened. A woman emerged, carrying a laundry basket filled with nothing but crumpled, yellowed paper. She glanced at me, then back at her door, as if I didn't belong, like I was the intruder. One by one, more doors began to creak. Shapes stepping into the hall. All familiar and wrong at the same time. And then my heart nearly stopped. Because one of them looked like my upstairs neighbor. Mrs. Collins. The kind old woman who always watered her plants and left cookies outside her door during the holidays. Only here, her eyes were glassy, her smile fixed. She didn't blink as she stepped into line with the others. They weren't rushing me. They weren't attacking. They just stood there, watching. Waiting. And then, in eerie unison, they all spoke. "Go back." The words didn't echo. They landed heavy, like the stairwell itself had spoken. I spun toward the stairwell door, desperate to leave, but it was gone. Not concrete, not even a wall. Just blank space. When I turned back, the hallway was empty. Every door shut. Silent. Only the sound of slow, heavy footsteps rising in the stairwell behind me remained. The footsteps grew louder. Not hurried, not frantic. Measured. Deliberate. I pressed myself against the wall of the stairwell, straining to hear. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Thud. One step. Thud. Another. They were climbing slowly, like they already knew I wasn't going anywhere. I tried to force myself upward, toward the 8th floor, but when I looked up, the stairs twisted wrong. The steps stretched too far, disappearing into shadows where the light should have been. And then I made a mistake. I looked down. The stairwell below was darker than it had ever been, the kind of black that swallows everything. No lights, no landings. Just endless stairs vanishing into a pit. But from the pit, I could see shapes. Dozens of them. Pale figures standing silently on the steps, all facing upward. All waiting. The footsteps behind me stopped. My heart hammered as I turned. And there, just one landing below, stood a figure. Not some stranger, not one of those glassy-eyed neighbors. It was me. Same hair. Same clothes. Same terrified posture. But its eyes were wrong, flat, gray, empty, like the others. It tilted its head, smiled just a little too wide. And then it spoke in my voice. "You don't belong here." I woke up gasping. My sheets were twisted around me, my shirt damp with sweat. The image of myself, standing on the stairwell landing, smiling back at me, was still burned into my mind. It was a dream. It had to be. The red numbers on my alarm clock glowed 3:07 a.m. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, except for the faint hum of the fridge down the hall. I sat there for a long time, clutching the blanket, whispering to myself. It was just a dream. Just a dream. But then I heard it. Clack. The sharp echo of a heel on concrete. From the stairwell. My stomach dropped. I tried to convince myself it was a neighbor coming home late, but the sound didn't move up or down. It stayed level. Pacing. Right outside my floor. I forced myself to the door. Heart hammering, and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Still, the footsteps didn't stop. I pressed my ear to the door. They weren't in the hall. They were behind the wall. The same rhythm I'd heard on the second, seventh floor. I backed away, trembling, telling myself again that it was stress, paranoia, lack of sleep, until my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification. My building's tenant group chat. Someone had just posted a photo. The stairwell. Landing marked 7. And the caption, "Did anyone else see her tonight?" When I opened the picture, my chest turned to ice. It wasn't just any woman in the photo. It was me. Standing at the second, seventh floor. Staring into the camera.